Hey guys, welcome to my presentation. It's called How I Beat Depression Quickly Without Drugs or Therapy. So I put this verse on here because I thought it was really relevant. It says, "But Jesus said to him, if you can, all things are possible for one who believes." That's Mark 9:23, guys. A little bit about my backstory. I was 19 years old and I was going to junior college trying to play tennis. And one night around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we got our family car repossessed. That was the only car we had as a family. And the next morning, my mom sat me down. She said we had no money for food, no car, and now I'm behind on the rent 3 months. I don't know what else to do. I believe that a man becomes a man when other people are dependent on him, and that's the day that I became a man. I dropped out of college to focus on making money, and one of my best friends invited me to work at a health supplement company part-time selling vitamins and weight loss shakes. So I decided to do it, and I became obsessed with becoming successful. I read books, attended seminars, studied psychology, did experiential training, leadership training. I skipped parties. By 21, I was an up-and-comer in the health company. And around this time, a guy named John, a millionaire and former lab owner, joined my team, and he offered to guide and mentor me. And one day he mentioned that he had this guaranteed investment that would triple his money in a week. And he said, get $25,000 together in 24 hours, and I'll let you be part of this investment. This will be a test to see if you truly want to be successful. And so I begged, borrowed, and scraped $17,000 together in 24 hours. I gave it all to John, and he strung me along for 6 months, with every delay promising a bigger payout. By the end, he was promising over $1 million payout, which obviously never came. And eventually his wife found out about this, and she called me and she broke the news. She says, "I'm so sorry. I found out about this. He's lying. He's never had the money. This isn't the first time he's done this." And shortly after finding out about this, my family and I were evicted out of our apartment. I was carless, I was in debt, and I felt worse than I was when I was 19. Now, one thought haunted me more than anything. How stupid did he think I was to be able to fall for this? And all my personal development, psychology seminars, that all went out the window. I sank into deep depression. I gained over 30 pounds, drank heavily. I used drugs. I spiraled out of control really fast. And my depression eventually turned into anger, treating people terribly. I was lost. I had no connection to God. I was so obsessed with understanding why do people do what they do. So I continued to study psychology on my own time. But 11 years went by living with anger and resentment. And it was around this time that a friend of mine, Lewis, asked me to refer somebody to his workshop. I had attended it a long time ago, and I referred to him, my girlfriend at the time, and surprisingly, she decided to go, and something interesting happened. Every night she came back home, she came back a little bit different each time, and the way she showed up reminded me of all that Lewis had taught me all those years ago when I went through his workshop. Tony Robbins says, if you're in your head, you're dead. So her transformation began to get me out of my head and in my heart, and I started to feel gratitude and love and joy after all these years of anger and resentment. And they say that God's gift to us is unlimited potential, and our gift to God is to develop as much of that potential as possible. So I made a decision to recondition my emotional patterns and completely reinvent myself. I continue to grow and expand my knowledge in NLP, neuroscience, traditional therapy. I even studied Tony Robbins' strategic intervention methods. Through all of that, I created my own psychological training framework I call neuro-emotional reconditioning, which obviously I first used on myself. And as a result, I was able to drop over 30 pounds. I quit doing drugs. I stopped drinking alcohol 100%. A special thanks to Lewis and God for helping me with the alcohol portion. I left my finance career for over 10 years for my true calling to be able to serve people in a more meaningful way. And most importantly, I created a relationship with God. Now, eventually I convinced Lewis to let me start a leadership program at his company called Leadership Academy to focus on the main domains in life, which are faith, family, fitness, and finance. And I trained over 40 students. I helped people lose as little as 40 pounds, some over 50 pounds. I helped some of them save their marriages. I helped other people find the strength to leave toxic relationships. I helped others earn more money. And I even helped some form their own relationship and connection to God. And so to bring this full circle, now I'm a psychological trainer at Compass Trainings, where my personal transformation began. And here's the truth. I have no degree, no certifications, just results. My name is Richard Lee, and I help people beat depression, anxiety, fear, and anger without drugs or therapy to live a truly fulfilled life, because my mentor taught me that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so this is a young school teacher. Her name is Allison Bayer. She says that I was super sad, I was anxious, and my automatic was to just numb and isolate. I called Richard, and within minutes, he had me connected to my heart. He had me crying, which is honestly a really big deal for me. I'm somebody who doesn't cry often. And it wasn't about the actual tears. It was about what was going on in my heart. He was able to ask me questions that made me feel super safe, but really dropped me into feeling something and moving through the emotions a lot quicker. Now, you can read all of my text testimonials and watch this one and other video testimonials on my booking page. If you're interested, go ahead and screenshot this or take a picture of it. And then in your Photos app, you can hold the QR code and it'll open up the page. Or you can just scan it right now and bookmark the page and you can check it out later. Okay? For now, we're going to go ahead and move on. My goal for the presentation is very simple, to show you that the fastest way for you to beat depression or anxiety or fear or anger without drugs or therapy is through my neuroemotional reconditioning framework. And the only way you're going to learn it is by watching this presentation, because I'm the one who created it. Now, quick disclaimer, neuroemotional reconditioning is for personal growth only, not manipulation. My name is Richard Lee. I'm not a licensed therapist or medical professional. I have no degree, no certifications, just results from training people one-on-one. This is strictly educational, not medical advice. For severe depression, anxiety, or mental health issues, consult a qualified provider. But by participating, you accept full responsibility for your choices and results. Outcomes aren't guaranteed, and I'm not liable for your actions or lack thereof, right? Most people aren't going to take any action. That's just the nature of it. So I encourage you to use NER responsibly with integrity for self-application only. Now, here are the 3 secrets of neuroemotional reconditioning. Secret number 1, the 3 hidden forces. These 3 invisible forces are directing all your behavior. Secret number 2 are the 3 drivers of identity. This is the blueprint that forges your identity. And secret number 3, the 3 drivers of emotion. Pull these 3 levers and you'll master your emotions instantly. So the 3 hidden forces of identity are environment, people, and our identity. Now, out of these 3, there is one that is more powerful than all the others, which is your identity. However, to give max value, I will touch upon the first 2. Does that sound fair enough? Great, let's get started. You ready? Cool. So environment, guys, this is one of my favorite books, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He teaches how our life or our environment shapes our behavior more than we care to admit. One great example is how 90% of Vietnam War veterans never touched heroin after coming back from the war. Okay, these were addicts. These were veterans that were addicted to heroin. They never touched the stuff after coming back home. A radical shift in their environment, right? They're in Vietnam in war. They come home, 90% never touch the stuff again. Whereas people that go to rehab, 90% of them go back to using heroin within 3 years because they're going back to the same environment. That's how powerful environment can be, guys. Number 2 is people. Okay, the second thing that influences our behavior tremendously are people. The book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion does a great job of explaining the 6 main ways. Now, I put 7 here because he came out with the 7th, I believe, in a different book. I somehow found out about it, but at least the first 6 are covered in this book. Highly recommend it. One of my favorite books. Now, on the other hand, if you're experiencing depression, maybe you're spending a lot of time alone. Genesis 2:18 says, "Then the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him." A quick fix for this is to get around people who regularly experience the emotions that you'd like to experience. Now, let's dive into identity. This is the strongest force in psychology, which is our need to be consistent with our identity, with who we believe we are, with how we define ourselves. We will literally die to remain consistent with who we believe we are. And identity has 3 major driving forces: our beliefs, our values, and our fears. Now, there's nearly limitless beliefs, values, and fears, but what I've discovered is that they all chunk into just a few buckets, which I'll explain later on. Now, this is our blueprint that forges our identity. Everything that we do, think, feel, and say can be pinpointed back to one of these 3 things. And this is where we're going to dive deeper together. So let's go ahead and dive into secret number 2. You ready? Cool. Secret number 2, the 3 drivers of identity are beliefs, our values, and our fears. So first of all, what is a belief? A belief is a feeling of certainty that something is true. That's it. That's all it is. So how does it work from a neuroscience perspective? So Hebb's rule says that neurons that fire together, wire together. In fact, my mentor taught me that. He said repetition is the mother of all skill. Now, most of us have heard of Pavlov's dog experiment, where he fed the dog food, measured its saliva, and then he began ringing a bell and feeding the dog food to see if he could create an association. After enough repetitions, he could ring the bell and the dog would salivate at the same amount, even if there wasn't any food in present, sight, sound, or smell. So here's my question. What's a bell got to do with food? Nothing. But in the dog's mind, they're equal because they were wired together through repetition. So there's the more repetition there is, the body then creates something called myelin for these neural pathways. This allows signals to travel up to 100 times faster, more efficiently. Think of it like the rubber wiring on a wire to keep the electricity running more efficiently and so it doesn't escape. So whatever you repeat gets wired and myelinated, whether it's a thought, a feeling, or a behavior, whether it serves you or doesn't, okay? Now, Hitler once said that if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. This is what a limiting belief is. It's a feeling of certainty that something is true that isn't actually true. In other words, it's a lie. We all adopt limiting beliefs that just simply aren't true, like I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not capable. And we lie to ourselves without realizing it, but it feels true to us, so we think it's true. Just like the sound of the bell equals food to the dog. So, once you break the limiting belief, once you see the lie as a lie, it's like turning on a light in a dark room. There's a huge shift and it reorients you. There's a reorganization in your brain and you can't unsee it. Just remember this, when deceit is present, there is no possibility for progression. So that's how powerful your beliefs are. They're kind of like building blocks, whereas your values and your fears, they're kind of like the structures that those building blocks create. Does that make sense? Great, let's move on to values. Now there's 7 major buckets of values, or what we call needs, that all other values chunk into. At the top of the list, we have the most basic value, or a need for certainty. We all have a need to feel safe, secure, comfortable, in control, to have a sense of predictability. But let me ask you, what would happen if you knew how every single day of every week of every month would play out for every year for the rest of your life? It'd be boring, right? So the second need we have is a need for uncertainty. We all want novelty, surprise, adventure, fun, variety, spontaneity. Now, the third need we have is a need for significance. We all want to feel unique, special, seen, get attention, validation, have status, honor, respect. Now, the fourth need we have is a need for connection. We all want love, but we often settle for connection because love has hurt us before and it's a little bit too scary, right? Now, connection isn't always a positive thing. Violence is a form of connection. In prison, the worst thing they could do to you is not that thing, is to put you in isolation, because we're hardwired to connect even if it's through violence. The fifth need we have is love. Now, the way I define it is 1 Corinthians chapter 13 type of love. Love is our evolutionary advantage. When a baby is born and you don't put it skin to skin with its mother, what happens? It dies. This is hardwired into all of us. There is no exception. Now, the sixth need we have is for growth. People, if you're not progressing, learning, advancing, because we're either growing or we're dying, and the only way we can grow is with pain. It's kind of like lifting weights. To grow muscle, you have to go through the pain. Pain in life is inevitable, but we can do one of two things with pain. We can either learn from it and grow, or we can do what most people do, is to choose to not learn and suffer. And it's kind of like how I chose to not learn and suffer for 11 years. But if you choose to grow from it and learn, you can now achieve the seventh and highest calling, which is our need to be in contribution or in service of others. Because once you grow, now you have something to give. Think about it. How good does it feel when a friend or your kid asks you for help and you affect their life in a positive and meaningful way? It's the most fulfilling feeling, isn't it? So the first 4 needs are the basic needs, or what I call the survival needs, or the needs of your head. The last 3 are the needs of the soul, or the needs of your heart. And if you currently value, typically we value 2 needs above all others. And if you currently value any of the first 4 needs as your top 1 or 2, what this does, it leads to pain long term, because you'll never experience true fulfillment. So here are some code words for each of the needs. Now, you can take a picture of this, screenshot it, or whatever. We're not going to go over each one, but this will help you understand. If somebody values, for example, stimulation, then you know it's uncertainty that they're looking for, right? Okay, now I'm going to use myself as a real life example. I used to drink a lot of alcohol. Why? Simple answer. It met some of my needs, but I always wanted to change it. Why? Simple answer. It didn't meet my heart needs or my soul needs. So let's take a look. On a scale 1 to 10, how much certainty did I get? 10 out of 10, because I knew immediately that I was going to feel good, especially if I took a shot on an empty stomach. How much uncertainty would I get? How much variety would I get? 10 out of 10, because I know immediately upon drinking, I would no longer feel the pain or the things that were stressing me out, and I would feel a radically different emotion and experience. So 10 out of 10. Significance. I'm suddenly the most handsome, strongest, charming, charismatic individual on the planet when I'm drinking. So I would get significance 10 out of 10. Connection from friends, family, or women that I wouldn't ordinarily get if I was sober. 10 out of 10. But none of my soul needs were being met, not even a little bit. Remember this. If there's a behavior, an emotional pattern, or a persistent thought that you can't seem to shake, and it's meeting 3 or more of your needs at a 5 out of 10 or higher, it becomes a habit. It's kind of like a toxic relationship. You see people stuck in them and you wonder, why don't they just leave? They keep complaining about it. But the truth is, it meets some of their needs. So have a little bit of empathy for people that engage in toxic behaviors or patterns, and understand and appreciate their model of the world. Now, let's dive into fears, guys. The third and final driver is fear. We all have fear, and they're healthy fears that keep us alive, but there are two major limiting fears, okay? First fear is the fear of not being enough, because if I'm not enough, then it reveals the deeper fear that if I'm not enough, then I won't be loved. And these fears come from your greatest source of love growing up. So whatever identity that you've adopted was greatly shaped by these two fears. This forced you to be a certain way in order to receive love, which causes perpetual conflict within yourself. I'll give you an example. Do you know a shy person? Well, they unconsciously chose to be shy, and I'll prove it to you. Because have you ever seen a baby that came out of the womb that was born and was shy and said, oh my gosh, I'm naked, I'm shy, don't look at me, I'm not going to cry or scream? No, babies don't do that. They don't have that conditioning yet. Shy people have been conditioned not to use their voice. Now, those are the three drivers of identity, guys: beliefs, values, and fears. Let's move on to secret number 3, the 3 drivers of emotion. If you pull these 3 levers, you'll master your emotions instantly. So we have focus, language, and physiology. So let's dive in, starting off with focus. So focus is the first lever. So how does it work? We receive 2 to 10 million bits of information. Latest studies show that it's more like 11 million bits of information. For example, you may not notice it, but the sensation of the clothes on your skin, or the sensation of your right pinky toe, or the fact that your nose is always in your field of vision, but you don't pay attention to it until I bring it to your awareness. So to survive this overload, our brain generalizes, distorts, and deletes this information, because otherwise we'd be overwhelmed. In fact, this is one of the challenges that some people with autism have to deal with: sensory overload. Now, that's why what you focus on not only expands, but it becomes your reality. That's why where focus goes, energy flows. So think about this. Have you ever spent time with somebody you really loved and everything else faded away? 1 hour felt like a minute, and your reality was completely different, which not only radically changed the way you feel, but it radically changed how you even experience time. Isn't that crazy? So the second thing is language. I was working with one of my students, and she was struggling with her husband and her son, and we did an exercise to extract her global beliefs about life, people, and herself. So this is the language she chose. Life is hard. People are looking out for themselves, and I am in survival mode. Now, you don't know anything about this woman other than the fact that she's married and she has a son. But based on her view of life, people, and herself, can you pretty easily predict or guess what her life must be like? If you believe that life is hard, do you feel differently than if you believe that life was an adventure, or life is a gift, or life is a dance, or life is a party, or life is sacred? We shift one word, change the meaning entirely, which changes the feeling entirely, which changes our experience of life entirely. By a little or a lot? A lot, right? So I took her through a process to begin changing her language, not just so she would understand it in a cerebral capacity, but so she could recondition her nervous system and emotional patterns. And these are the new beliefs that she came up with, okay? Life is an adventure. People are a gift. And I am a child of God. So how differently are these feelings of these new beliefs? Can you easily predict how she will now engage with life if she believes these to be true in her heart, in her nervous system? Pretty easy, right? So the last and third and fastest way to change your emotional state is with physiology. How you move, how you use your body. Emotion is energy in motion. Here's 7 major elements of physiology. Number 1 is your posture. If you sit like this versus like this, completely different emotion. Breathing, right? Sometimes you're so stressed you forget to breathe. And if you forget to breathe, that sends signals to your brain to release cortisol, stress hormone. We're in danger. We're not breathing. We're not getting oxygen, right? So breathe, right? In fighting, if you learn how to fight, they teach you that you got to breathe with every strike, right? Because if you stop breathing, you get gassed out and you get knocked down. Obviously, you're not going to win the fight. Facial expressions. If you're like this versus like this, completely different emotions. Your voice and tonality, right? How you use your voice and tonality. If you use your voice all soft and really sad and slow and depressed and soft, it's different than if you go loud and fast and hard and excited, right? How you use your voice and tonality affects your emotions. Movement, in fact, voice and tonality are my favorite. That's how I can most quickly change. I start going into and start incanting and saying things that'll get me fired up to get myself out of a negative state. Movement and gestures, the way I use my body like this versus like Eeyore, slow and completely different emotions. How you use your eyes, your blink rate. If you're blinking super fast and you just had a bunch of coffee, or you're blinking like you're falling asleep, completely different emotions. The direction in which you look, straight, down, up, sideways, right? That affects your feelings, your emotions. Your muscles, whether they're tense or relaxed, right? Tense up your body, tense up everything, your every muscle, and then relax. two totally different emotions with just your muscles. Okay? Now, to understand how powerful physiology is, there is something called heart-brain coherence, which refers to the state of physiological and psychological alignment between your brain and your heart. If you experience emotions like gratitude or compassion, the heart enters coherence, which in turn stabilizes brain activity, which improves focus, emotional balance, health, and resilience. Not only aligns your heart and your brain, but it aligns your blood pressure, your breathing, and essentially your entire body. So those are the three secrets of neuroemotion reconditioning. Secret number one are the three hidden forces. These three invisible forces direct all your behavior. Secret number two is the three drivers of identity, the blueprint that forges your identity. And secret number three are the three drivers of emotion. If you pull these three levers, you'll learn to master emotions instantly. We have a small problem. All this information is great, but it's kind of like losing weight and getting in shape. We all know exactly what to do, or at least that we can go on YouTube to learn how to get into shape for free, don't we? So why are 2/3 of Americans overweight or obese? Because life is 80% psychology and only 20% mechanics. I've given you the mechanics, but it doesn't matter until we work on the psychology. You want to know why? I've been saying it all along. The strongest force in psychology and the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Wisdom is power. Knowledge is knowing that junk food is bad for you. Wisdom is not eating it. You now have the tools, but until you begin to shift your identity, break your limiting beliefs, your values, and your fears, most people won't do anything with these tools, just like I didn't do anything with them for 11 years. But here's the truth. You don't need me to create transformation or to rewire yourself or recondition yourself. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Ezekiel 36:26 says, God himself will give you a new heart of flesh and a new spirit. And Jesus said in Matthew 4:4 that man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So I sincerely mean it when I say that you don't need me to transform and recondition your emotional patterns. You only need Christ. But all I do offer a faster path than if you did it on your own and if you try to figure it out on your own. So if you're interested in that, join our school community. We're going to be talking about this over and over. You can post your questions. You can post your exact scenarios. I'll make video responses to help you through this, to help coach you through it. I host a live weekly to make sure that I'm providing new information to give you guys the opportunity to break and recondition your emotional patterns. And then when you finally do, guess what? You're part of this community. So now you can contribute. And somebody asks a question, you can step in and serve them and contribute to them and be a leader within this community and be who God called you to be, who God intended for you to be. He didn't intend for you to be depressed. In fact, he says, do not fear, more times in the Bible than you can count, right? He says, do not fear. He did not give us a spirit of timidity or fear, right? So if you want to align with who God created you to be and what God's purpose is for you, then I highly encourage you, join this community so that not only you can learn to break free from depression, anxiety, fear, anger, but so you can serve other members that might need your insights, that might need your wisdom. Anyways, guys, that was my time. I thank you for yours. I look forward to seeing you inside of the school community. Take care.